that transition plan and everything that we've built over the last 2 years and where the party can move forward. I'm thinking about Planned Parenthood and the issues that I care about deeply, and I know many of y'all do too. That is really what's weighing on me as I think about this decision. But if and when I do make that decision, I would hope that I could have your support, because I do feel very well qualified to meet the needs of the community. I have lots of experience, as y'all know, in healthcare statewide. I'm currently actually Commissioner Trevillion's appointee on the Expo Center Revitalization Committee, helping to bring more economic development and think about how we move the Expo Center forward that benefits our whole community and brings economic development to the Eastern Crescent, as well as continuing to support the rodeo's presence there, which I know is really important for the community as well. I'm also currently serving on the Transit for Austin board, helping to envision our plan for moving Austin forward through transportation. I've worked in the state legislature for lots of years. Prior to working for Planned Parenthood, I also worked for the Texas Medical Association. I worked for the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities, and I worked on criminal justice reform with the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition as well, working on their very first reentry manual. When I think about the role of county judge, I think of lots of similarities between that role and party chair, right? That it's not about your personal political agenda, but it's ultimately about serving the whole county and what the constituents need and want. And I think as party chair, I've done a good job in helping to set priorities where there's consensus and helping to build consensus and set agendas and keep us focused and keep making progress. So that's a little bit about why I think I'm sort of best qualified to run for this, but again, I am still thinking about this decision. I think a lot of people have questions about the process, so if I could have just a minute to explain what the process looks like to everybody. Because we are already past the primary election, the Democratic precinct chairs get to select the Democratic nominee to be on the November ballot. The county judge position would actually normally not be up on this November election. It's normally, it was on the 18 ballot, it would again the 2022, but because of Judge Eckhart's pending resignation and timeline, it will be on this November's ballot. And so because we are past the primary, the Democratic precinct chairs get to pick the nominee for who will be on the ballot. The Republican Party also gets to pick a Republican nominee by their precinct chairs, and then both nominees are on the November ballot. The only precinct chairs eligible to vote in that election are the precinct chairs who were elected in the March 3rd primary. So if a precinct chair was appointed for an unexpired term after March 3rd, or they come in after March 3rd, they're not eligible to vote in this election. So it's only the precinct chairs who were on the March 3rd primary ballot that won their races that are eligible to vote in this election. The timing of the election is also set by law. So because the primary runoff is pushed back until July, the new precinct chairs who were elected in March don't actually get to don't actually get sworn into their new term until August. And so this vote can't take place until the new precinct chairs begin their new term, which is after August 3rd. And there's also a timeline by which it has to take place to be set on the ballot. So this vote will take place in August. I think hopefully many people got the CEC agenda for tomorrow. We've listed our August meeting date as August 16th. So I would assume the vote would most likely take place on the August 16th CEC meeting. Again, it's only the precinct chairs who were on the March 3rd primary ballot can vote. There were only 134 of them. So for whoever decides to run in this race, it actually only takes 68 votes to win. And by the time August comes, there may be fewer precinct chairs, right? We know people move and resign and step down for different reasons. So there will be no more than 134 people eligible to vote, but there could be fewer depending on resignations and people stepping down. So that means—
Diana, I'm going to have to interrupt you because you've gone over your 5 minutes and I want to allow time for questions.
Great. So
I'm going to unmute everyone and let me see who has a question. Okay. Somebody raise your hand.
I think I see Marvin's hand raised.
Okay, Marvin.
Diana, could you talk a little more about if you do decide to run, what your agenda will be as county judge?
my agenda, right now we're sort of in a unique moment that the county judge's top is the emergency executive of the entire county. So obviously, moving us forward from wherever we are at that time frame around our COVID response and making sure that we're supporting communities in recovery, and also that we are strengthening our emergency response plan will be top of mind for lots of people. We will potentially have a transportation bond on the November election, and we'll be thinking about how to move that forward. And we also have issues that we're still trying to iron out around the Expo Center as well. Thinking Sorry, can y'all hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not quite sure where y'all lost me. I don't know why I muted and unmuted. Okay. So emergency response, strengthening our emergency response plan, helping communities through recovery after COVID. Economic development, particularly on the Eastern Crescent, continues to be a challenge, as well as medical care that we saw. Criminal justice reform, there is so much that we can do through the county commissioner's court on criminal justice reform, and we've seen other counties like Dallas and Harris County really leading the way there, and we have lots of work that we can be doing to have a more equitable justice system. And then I think I also mentioned transportation as well, and we have some other issues that are still at their pending. We still have the Palm School issue, and like I said, the Expo Center as well, negotiating with the city of Austin and figuring out how we can move those issues forward. I would just like to say also, though, this vote is 4 months away, and there's a lot going on in our community right now, and I think that whoever decides to run for this position, you all as precinct chairs, the best way that you can judge their qualifications is their response in this moment, and not necessarily us prioritizing individual campaigning for the role. This is the executive, the emergency executive of the entire county, and I think that says a lot about whoever decides to run for this position.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Please raise your hand so I can unmute you. Or, okay, I don't see.
I see a question from David Albert.
David, okay, unmute yourself then, David. Can you do that? Never mind, I got it. Go ahead.
Sorry, my computer was giving me trouble there. So Deanna, how would, if you were to become the nominee, how would that work with the succession in terms of the county party and its organization? Would you have to resign from that position when? You have to resign before voting? Who would take over in the run-up to the election? All that kind of stuff.
So, okay, I think I'm unmuted now. So I don't have to resign from my position to put my name in the hat. That is a little bit of what I'm still trying to work out now, of if I would stay on through the date of the vote or if I would resign sooner. And again, I understand that as a strong leader, having a strong succession plan in place is the most important thing. I've been able to talk to a number of different people. Actually, probably I would say 7 or 8 people who are interested in being considered for party chair, who all have different qualifications and skills that I think would be very strong in an election year and continuing to support us in our fundraising. Right now, I am working on our fundraising plan for the 3rd and 4th quarters of the year. Obviously, we've had to delay our JBR fundraiser, which is our biggest fundraiser of the year, as well as delaying sponsorships around our coordinated campaign while we sort of get a grasp on what we think the coordinated campaign could look like. So my goal would be to make sure that we are up and running with our fundraising events for the 3rd and 4th quarter, that we're in a solid place with our pledges and commitments to the coordinated campaign from our candidates and elected officials, and that we have at least 1, 2, or maybe even 3 people who are strongly considering this, are well suited for it, and that the precinct chairs have an opportunity to connect with and hear from before they make a decision on who is elected as the next chair if I decide to step down.
Okay, I'm gonna have
When would that
to
decision be?
interrupt there. Sorry, we are very limited in time, and I need to move on to Andy Brown. Are you ready to go?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Sandra. Yeah, so my name's Andy Brown. I grew up here in Travis County, got father to two, husband to one, and I'm running for Travis County Judge. And first, I just want to say that both Jeff and Diana are great people. I have tons of respect for both of them. They both helped me when I ran for county judge in 2014. Diana was a public supporter, and Jeff actually took me to several football games, high school football games up in Pflugerville. So we're going to get through this. It's going to be fine. We're all going to work together on this. But I have the secret weapon, and I was an intern for Ann Richards in 1994. And she gave me the secret of winning campaigns, which I will now share with you. That secret is get out early, meet with a ton of people, and don't get any opponents. So 2 out of 3, not terrible. But the thing that sets me apart in this is that I have a proven history of bringing people together for progressive causes in Travis County, getting through the bureaucracy of both city and county government, and getting things done to divert people away from the criminal justice system and to improve our healthcare system. My first job out of college was as an emergency medical technician, where I learned the basics of emergency management and triage. I later graduated from UT Law School. I was Congressman Doggett's campaign manager in 2004 when Tom DeLay redistricted him down to McAllen. And I was Beto O'Rourke's finance director in the 28 campaign when we broke all sorts of records with both fundraising and turnout. Since then, I'm now a lawyer, and I'm on the board of the Sobering Center. And the problem that we're facing right now, the biggest problem that we're facing, is that even before COVID, we had almost 200,000 uninsured people in Travis County, which is just an unacceptable number at any point. But we know that we're not going to be able to depend on Abbott and Trump to fix that. And that is why I'm for Medicare for all. And I'm going to work every single day until we get there to make sure that everyone in Travis County, whether you live in Del Valley or Central Austin, has access to quality health care. And I want to tell you a little bit of a story about the Sobering Center and how that shows how I'm qualified for this position. In 2013, I decided to fight for a Sobering Center. It just makes great sense. I ended up chairing a committee of the police chief, fire chief, EMS chief, about 40 people who are experts on mental and behavioral health, a lot of elected officials. And we met once a month for over a year to study Sobering Centers in different communities around the United States. We settled on one model, and we ended up pitching that to the city council. And we organized around that. We figured out how to build coalitions with the city council, and they agreed to fund it. And then we did the same thing at the county commissioner with the commissioner's court. We worked with Judge Sarah Eckhart to figure out how to build coalitions at the county government. We got them to agree to give us a building. Now it has been up and running for over a year, and it has diverted 3,000 people away from the criminal justice system. That's 3,000 people who never set foot in the county jail. And it's great. It's going great. The problem is, on the back end of it, we have realized that there is still a big hole in services for people who want, after they go through the Sobering Center, to get mental health care, behavioral health care, go through recovery, any number of things. And that's why I'm running for county judge, is because I think the same argument that applied to getting a Sobering Center in the first place applies to improving access to services like behavioral mental health care and healthcare in general in Travis County. And there's also a moral argument for it. I have 2 friends who have experience with this. One, very tragically, actually died a year ago. He was an alcoholic, his liver failed, and he never went through recovery. I have another friend who has a happier story. She is an alcoholic, went through recovery here in Austin, and has been sober for about 5 years, and it's great. But I don't want the fact that you can or cannot pay for recovery in Austin to determine whether or not you live or die, and I think it is that big of a decision. They say that your budget reflects your values, but the Travis County budget, the single largest line item in the county budget, is the jail, which in effect is the largest mental health care facility in Travis County. That is unacceptable to me. It does not reflect my values, and I'm guessing it doesn't reflect your values either. I would like to provide more mental health care up front so that we have fewer people going into the jail. I also am in favor of bail reform. There is no reason why anybody should be sitting in the county jail waiting for trial simply because they cannot afford to pay bail to get out. Ethics reform is another area I'm very concerned with, and it is not the sexiest sounding thing in the world, but it pervades every bit of county government. We have a weak county government system in Texas. We need a strong leader who's not afraid to stand up to corporate interests, to people trying to get contracts with the county, and to others to make sure that the voices of regular people in Travis County who are not donating tens of thousands of dollars to the county are heard. And it is a sad state of affairs when Greg Abbott and the state of Texas have a better system around this than we do at Travis County. First of all, we don't even have an ethics commission, which is crazy. And we also don't have a way to find out who is donating to county government easily. If you go to the state system, you can look it up easily, see how much Andy Brown has given to people. You can do a search. You cannot do that at the county. And I think that is just a poor system. I want to make sure that this ethics commission looks at ways to prevent people who are trying to do business with the county, either trying to get a road contract or build a courthouse or get appointed to something, to make sure that their donations are not affecting that.
I gotta cut you off because we're running out of time. I've got a couple of minutes. If anyone has a question for Andy, gotta tell me who it is. I see a raised hand anywhere.
I have a question.
Daniel?
Yeah, I have a question. Andy, thanks for your support for Medicare for All. Could you tell us a little bit about how you would implement a Medicare for All plan for the county?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we need to focus on, and thanks, Daniel, that's a great question. The county government has two big responsibilities. One is indigent healthcare, and the other is the criminal justice system. And those are obviously both huge parts of the budget. On healthcare, first of all, I would support Gina Hinojosa's Healthy Texas Act, because I think as county governments all across Texas know, that would do more for county budgets by having the state actually step up and provide Medicare for all and help us at a local level in an incredible way. And it would reduce the burden on your local property taxes, which, in case you don't know, your property taxes are what pay for the $1.2 billion budget of the county each year in large part. There are some fees and some other things, but that's a huge chunk of it. And the other problem with that is that right now, residential properties are valued, in my opinion, at a higher rate than commercial properties are, and we need someone to stand up to fix that. But back to your question, Daniel, right now, every dollar that we don't spend at the county jail, every dollar that we don't spend through good diversion programs like Judge Nancy Hohengarten does with the mental health diversion docket, that is a dollar that we could spend in other things in the county, such as healthcare. Right now, I mentioned that pre-COVID, we had a 200,000 person gap between insured and uninsured in Travis County. There's already the MAP program. There is Sendero Healthcare, part of Central Health, that does provide some health coverage for the very lowest income of people. But I was talking to actually a Democratic county chair today who used to work at the state capitol, and she first qualified for healthcare under those programs. But as soon as she got a job that paid a little bit more, she still couldn't afford healthcare, but she no longer qualified to go to those clinics. That is ridiculous. And I think that if we work hard at the county level, can shrink that gap of the 200,000 or more people who do not have healthcare in Travis County, and increase those levels by refocusing our budget priorities.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to Jeff Trevelyan. Jeff, are you ready to speak with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, first of all, good afternoon. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today. And the first thing I'd like to say is something very similar to my other colleagues, and that is I want to make sure that in this race that we all recognize that we are Democrats. We all want this place to be better, and we should not take this as opportunities to say spiteful and nasty things about each other. And I don't think anybody has. When we have our other two candidates, they are candidates that I have supported before. When Diana ran for party chair, I was one of her first supporters and believe in her and think that she is a strong leader coming through the party. I remember Andy Brown when we worked together on back when Gary Morrow was over the General Land Office on 21st Century Democrats. As a young person, he has been very involved in the political process, and I think those things are to be commended. The only thing that I ever try to run on is trying to make sure that you know the things that I believe in and the things that I would support and the things that I have been supporting, which you can look at over our last 4 budget years. We have tried, I have made as the most important pillars of my administration. How do we serve community? How do we serve the people first? Public dollars should be used to serve the community first, not larger interests. There was a discussion a few minutes ago about the ethics policies, and while they are not perfect, this Commissioners Court has amended Chapter 33 to strengthen the roles and responsibilities of ethics. And we had an ethics group commission, which was run through our intergovernmental relations officers. Several folks that you all know, Jack Gullahorn was one. Our whole IGR team that laid down rules and principles that we now live by to make sure that we are doing things ethically. It would be nice to have the electronic immediate access to campaign data that you get at the state level, but you can pull campaign data on each candidate from our system. And our belief has been you should know everybody who is not only contributing to, but supporting the folks that are running for an office. When you look at the things that I've primarily been working on, they have been transportation, access to health, and economic and youth development. When we talk about transportation, we have worked really hard to make sure that we address health and safety issues. When you look at the last 2 bond initiatives, you'll see that we address low water crossings, what happens with Atlas 14, how we get more than one way in and one way out of each community, how we make sure that people are safe and that we are addressing evacuation routes all over the county, but especially in those low to moderate income areas of the community. We worked real hard to update our solid waste siting ordinance so that waste management could not expand, and hopefully we will continue to work and make sure that they will not put a transfer station into our area. We have worked hard to strengthen our hub policy so that local and minority and women-owned businesses have an opportunity to do business with the county. We have worked really hard as it relates to putting medical clinics on the other side of 183, because what you find is the clinics that Central Health put up initially were clinics that existed where poor people used to live. We wanted to make sure that we supported those areas that have the highest healthcare disparities. 78724, which is Colony Park, 78725, which is Austin's Colony. We worked hard to make sure that they had clinics in those places. Well, first, one co-located clinic at Overton Park. We also expanded the clinic resources on 71 and 290 and 71. Thing on the agenda that you would like to have discussed with 2 votes. So whether I would be county commissioner or not, our agenda would still be addressed. The difference from the county chairperson's seat or county judge's seat is that one of your primary responsibilities is setting the agenda. So in one, you're always able to influence it, but in the other, there's more of a direct choice of the things that matter. But with that being said, the most important thing is trying to build a consensus, trying to understand what community needs are and address community priorities. My goal is to make sure that we are addressing community priorities, not just my own.
Thank you.
Okay, I did have some comments to come in from Representative Doggett, but I think she may have, Diana Gomez, but she may have gotten kicked off and not come back on. Basically, he was just concerned about us, each one and every one of us, and wanted to express that concern and to see if we had any questions or needs, because Lloyd will do his damnedest to help us in any way, shape, and form. And I think we already know that. He did want us to reach out to him if there's anything he can do. And I can't imagine what he could do except say, let's go on and this is over and we can go back to living our normal lives. But I don't think that's going to happen real soon. Beyond
Well,
that, we also had a request from the Oliver campaign, and I believe they chose to use the chat box to let you know what was going on with them. So I think that pretty much covers everything we have today. Does anybody have any final comments to make?
Stay safe. Wear your masks.
Now, did you all see my mask that I told about earlier? Matthew McCarthy came up with this. It's a simple square, and you wrap inside a coffee filter, because that will help. It's not going to cure everything, but it's going to help. Put it inside, put 2 rubber bands on the end, use for years. That's what it is. Okay?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Madam Chair, if I could say one thing, I talked about 2 points of the platform of what I've been focusing on: transit and access to healthcare. But what we do with what we allow for our kids to do after normal school hours from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock is going to be critically important. How we make sure that they have access to educational resources and job preparation is going to make all of the difference in the world. And those are things that we have been working on through our Health and Human Services platform. So that there be training available, that we continue to work with our local workforce board, and that we work with each and every ISD and city in our area to make sure that they have access to resources that are going to give our kids constructive things to do. Because my kids that are working and are involved in community things are not my kids that are in trouble and in the Gardner-Betts system.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. Meredith, you had a question? Okay, I must have lost her.
No, I'm here. I just was having to figure out how to unmute myself. I'm wanting to ask about what would be the best way for us to communicate to our legislators that we want another care package that includes help for farmers and agriculturalists who currently are having to pour out thousands of gallons of milk and plow under crops, right? People are so hungry and desperate for food or money for food. The last care package did have some money for that, but it's not, I don't believe, going to be near enough to keep our agriculture programs on track. So I would hope we would encourage the legislators to include another package to USDA. Thank you.
Thank you. Can somebody answer that question? Jeff, you want to take that on?
Sure. We have worked really hard to make sure that, and we've done this not only by working with our state officials, but we've also been in touch with congressional offices. And in fact, we had a COVID-19 town hall meeting this morning with our state and NAACP officers. And what we have been asking for is that dollars go to vulnerable populations to address their needs rather than going through corporations with the expectation that resources will trickle down. We have been working with our school districts. We have been working with our city leaders to make sure that we are doing things to stand up the Capital Area Food Bank, to make sure that we are putting resources together that provide food and other resources for our most vulnerable populations. We want to make sure that resources actually go to the bottom up and not to the top down. We want to make sure that as we are and we have been talking with our congressional offices to ask, and I think the Democratic Party at the national level has done a magnificent job of making sure that those principles are in place. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has slowed down a number of recommendations that seek to pay corporations for things rather than the people that they serve. So we have been pushing hard to make sure that the resources go through programs that cities and counties can get resources from, identify and develop an asset map of the resources that we have, and then build a program of instructions to our community members so that we can help them find the resources that are there for them.
Sandra, can I add something?
Sure.
We're talking about the stimulus bill and the effects of that. This came actually to me originally from my students. So, and it's just a problem with the stimulus bill that I don't think a lot of people have heard about. I think everybody knows that most people get the $1,200 and $500 per child, but I don't think people have heard about the group that got left out, which is the student dependents between the ages of 17 and 23. Do people know about this? If you're a dependent on your parents, between 17 and 23, you don't get your parents don't get the 500, but those dependents also don't get the 1,200.
That's true, and I run into that with my own students at St. Ed's.
Yeah.
Unless they file an income tax form, they're left out.
And this is a low income group a lot of the time, like Jeff was talking about, a vulnerable group, and especially mine at ACC, and they were just completely left out of the stimulus bill. And I'm sorry the Doggett staff person isn't here because it's something I wanted to get to Lloyd. And
I would definitely recommend that you send him a message either via his email, or you can call his office because they're waiting to hear from.
Yeah, I was planning to. But I also just wanted people here to know about this issue because it's a real hole in the bill. I'm not quite sure why.
You're absolutely right, David. They are left out, and I was aware of that with my own students. But there are a lot of single groups out there that are left out just because they either don't file an income tax form, or they don't work, or they're just not a matter of record anywhere. And that's one of the major reasons we've been emphasizing the census, because that's the only way people know that you even exist. So I'm going to give Susan over here a chance to say something. Go ahead, Susan.
Well, thank you very much. My question is about testing, and is if anybody, if we can advocate or make sure that we get increased testing in Travis County. Is that something that we can advocate for or do something about?
Yes, we should be advocating for it. Unfortunately, I understand from the governor's office that Texas ranks 49th out of the country on number of people that were tested, and in the stimulus package, what our expectation is, what we have asked for is and we formally asked for it as minority elected officials, is that we get a state standard for testing people. When we saw Central Health close down the 2 centers that we had stood up east of 35 without any discussion with the public, we called them on the carpet that week. We brought in our community members, we brought in our elected officials, and we asked them why they did it, why they didn't tell us they were going to do it, and asked how quickly it could be put back. They could be put back in place. The one I understand in Del Valle has been put back in place, and the other should be coming back online this week. We asked that those sites be places that citizens could be tested. One of the problems that this state has, and it's a national problem, but this state especially, is we don't have a number of test kits. At one time, we were offered test kits that we turned down. And you almost had to have a letter signed from the president in order to be tested. And the place that you had to go, nobody knew about. So ultimately, until we test, we won't know the depth of the problem. And until we develop a vaccine, which is probably 12 to 18 months off, we won't be safe. We will have to take social distancing steps, and we will also have to make sure that we use our masks and gloves and sanitizers as well. So that is something that we will be formally pushing for. But this is something that the state fell short with us for, trying to be in lockstep with the president's office.
Thank you.
We have been pushing formally.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm aware of that effort that's being tried, but it keeps running up against roadblocks like so many other things in Texas. The one thing I would like to mention is my son and I were talking about the gloves we were using. And years ago, in every occasion, people wore gloves. And I remember seeing even the situations where women would be sitting at dinner, out to dinner, still using their gloves to eat. And I think maybe we might go back to that someday. And they were some pretty fancy gloves at those days, so you might keep that in mind. I believe Lynn Kurth had a question. Did you, Lynn?
Well, I just wanted to say that everybody who has an ear, and this is for Lloyd Doggett too, the stimulus package needs to have money to keep the Postal Service solvent, because I predict that that's their next way to squash vote by mail. So, yeah.
So that is something that we have been talking with Dana de Beauvoir about. We've asked for the case, and what I mean by the case is give us a proposal that would allow us to do so. What would it take? Who would do the work? How long would the process take? We have asked for those things to be put in place. But when you have a pension system that you're required to fund out 75 years, I mean, they've done everything that they could to weaken that system. And we've got to point out how important the postal system has always been, and why it continues to be important and relevant now, because there's no question that they're trying to close down the post office and bring private interests in to take its place.
Yeah, they've been trying that for a long time. I would like to bring Diana back into the picture, if Diana will. And as county chair, I do believe that the county party can be very effective in doing things like getting the vote, if nothing else but peer pressure. So I'd like to hear from you, Diana, to see if you think that's possible and what we can do about it.
Tell me the question specifically, to get out the vote right now, or put pressure on where?
Yes, all of the above.
All of the above. So obviously there's still a lot up in the air with the election and what's going to happen with vote by mail. The governor's press conference yesterday did not give me a lot of confidence that obviously our government is going to do right by voters and move to vote by mail. The governor is moving to open retail and do drive-by, everything else. He's considered alcohol and gun sales essential this time. So I don't foresee the governor understanding, right, the health severity that we're in and how that impacts our elections. And we know that they've always tried to suppress voting. So I don't think that this is any different for them. I'm obviously dealing with the same thing on the reproductive rights fronts. They've always attacked reproductive rights. They use this as a chance to ban it outright. I think they'll continue to do the same thing on the elections front. While we wait for the lawsuit to continue, which we know it'll be a legal ping pong of good rulings, bad rulings, good ruling, bad rulings for a couple more months. We know that at a minimum, at least people over 65 and older and people who have a disability are qualified to vote by mail. So the party has started weekly phone banks targeting those populations to encourage them to get the vote by mail application now. We're just reminding people, like, we don't know what's going to happen with the election in July or in November. You're eligible to vote by mail, so we'd love to send you an application now. We're getting them in the database, making sure we have their information correct. And we're also just doing a general check-in with them. This is the Democratic Party, and we want to make sure that you're doing okay. Are there any resources we can provide? And we're also in the same phone call reminding people to do their census. Really responsive. I know we are all avid thinkers on this call. And when we get to October, November, those phone calls don't go as positively as we would hope. But these last couple of weeks when we've been phone banking, people are so happy to hear from us. They're so happy to hear that the Democratic Party is reminding people about vote by mail, telling them they're eligible, making sure that they're getting mailed the application to vote, and reminding them about their census. So that's been going really good. We're in close contact with the state party to continue to figure out what our coordinated campaign looks like. We are right now, again, I mentioned fundraising earlier, trying to get our fundraising in really solid pace so we can hopefully launch our paid canvas very strongly August 1st. Again, that's tentative on where we are, with healthcare outcomes, but we're trying to get our finances in place and our infrastructure in place so that we could make up some lost time that we've, sort of lost in this period where we have to stay at home. So we could launch a strong paid canvas along with our volunteer canvas around August, September. And then we've been talking to Dana's office as well, trying to understand what the lawsuit means in Travis County and what are some of the challenges that we would face here. Vote by mail is possible. She's, understands and been looking, to Commissioner Trevillion's point, the budget of getting more scanners, having drive-through voting sites, all that kind of stuff. It gets difficult, the mechanics of it, when you have to ramp up your vote by mail project and have more staff who can manage all of the vote by mail process, and then still at the same time have to manage the in-person voting and the logistics of the in-person voting, right? It would be great if we were either totally healthy and could keep elections the way they've been, the way people are used to, or if our state government would step up and we could have a universal vote by mail program and have no in-person voting. But having both to run at the same time presents a lot of logistical challenges, and it potentially means we're having to orient people, one, to vote by mail if they've never done it before, and then two, having to probably consolidate and shift polling locations, which we know that always causes frustration, for voters when they can't go to the polling place they've always gone to. So there's still a lot more to come. We are just continuing to talk about it, but at a minimum, we know there is a group of people who will be eligible to vote by mail no matter what. They are not all currently voting by mail now, and we can at least start.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I don't know if you folks are aware, but Wisconsin recently had their primary, and the Supreme Court of Wisconsin not only said, no, we can't use the vote by mail open system, but they also were able to shut down about 80% of the polling places. So there were places where people had no polling place to even go to, had to drive miles, literally, to another town, another district, to stand in line. And, it was just almost suicide, but they did it. They did it, and they voted, and they made changes. So I'm very positive about things moving forward in spite of everything that's happening to us. I want to give Andy Brown another chance to maybe weigh in on this. He doesn't have a position at this point like Jeff's or Diana's, but I'm sure he's got some ideas about what he might be able to do. So Andy, it's your turn to speak.
Awesome, thank you. Hattie came in here to join us too. So one thing that I'm working on now is I'm still working with Beto O'Rourke in the organization Powered by People that he set up, or that we all set up several months ago. And the goal there was basically to organize in the 9 districts, the 9 state rep districts where Beto got more votes than Ted Cruz, but a Republican still won that race for state rep. And things were, of course, going great until COVID hit. But the plan there has shifted a little bit, but is still on track. And that is, there are lots of voters who have moved into Texas from outside of Texas, have strong Democratic voting histories, and we know who they are in Texas. And so we're working with the state party and other HDCC and other groups to reach out to those voters, to send them a voter registration and then do a chase to them, which would have been in these targeted districts at the doors. Now we're looking at ways to find phone numbers and social media and other ways to chase it. But I think that will still help Democrats immensely in the fall, that group of voters who are new to Texas, not yet registered, but have strong Democratic history. We have, in general, Powered by People right now has ceased fundraising because there's obviously bigger needs than political stuff right now. And we are entirely doing stuff to help get volunteers to go to the food banks in the 21 districts across Texas. So our volunteer coordinator, our fundraising efforts, everything is geared towards right now getting volunteers and raising money for food banks from El Paso to Austin to everywhere across Texas. And frankly, right now, that seems like the biggest challenge, and that the banks themselves generally seem to have food at this point. It was a little scary there for a little while, but the biggest need that they have is volunteers to get that food out, and then volunteers to call other volunteers to fill the time slot. So if anybody wants to do that, the website is poweredxpeople.org is what we're working on right now.
Thank you so much. We are approaching an hour, which now has exceeded our time. So I think we need to close down. I want to thank you all for joining me. If you have any further comments, questions, criticisms, please just email me. And hopefully we can meet next month face-to-face. If not, we'll do it again on Zoom. I did apply for a pro license, and Diana has also graciously volunteered the TCDP Zoom license, so we may be able to have longer meetings and better ones. And now that we all know how to behave ourselves in Zoom, thank you so much, and bye-bye, okay?
Great job. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you. Meredith signing off.
Okay, bye-bye.
This is Mandy. Hi and bye.
Bye, Mandy.
Miss you guys.
Love you all.
Miss you more, Danielle. Bye.
Aw.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.